Invite you to rise in body or in spirit while holding on to that gray hymnal and turn to page 349 for our Music for Gathering. We gather together, hymn number 349.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, often called UUAA. I am Lori Reese, one of the lay worship leaders. This congregation has been a liberal spiritual community since 1865, the year the American Civil War ended. Unitarian Universalism is a religious movement that proclaims the importance of individual freedom of belief. To those of you online, thank you for your presence. Please introduce yourself and greet each other in the chat. If this is your first time joining us, please consider filling out a survey at uuaa.org/newcomer survey so we may connect with you in a meaningful way. For anyone here in the sanctuary who is new, we have an in-person newcomer welcome immediately after the service. It is located in the Redmond Room, which is on your left just outside the double doors. Friends will meet you there and answer questions and share a bit more of who we are. A few announcements as we gather this Sunday. The teens in our congregation, the YRUU, will be selling apple dumplings starting today in the social hall after the service. The sale runs today and December 1st and December 8th. Only the frozen dumplings will be sold today because today is Pie Day. But the next 2 Sundays, the YRUU will sell both frozen dumplings and ones that are hot and ready to eat with ice cream. And these dumplings, they will warm your heart and soul. They are that good. Today is Pie Sunday. There will be lots of pie in the social hall after each service. Everyone is welcome to join us there and have some pie, even if you forgot or didn't know to bring one. My favorite pie is Southern pecan pie. One Thanksgiving a few years ago, I left dirty pie dishes in the open dishwasher and a partially eaten pecan pie on the kitchen counter. I went for a long walk to justify yet another piece of pie. When I returned, Norman, our incorrigible but adorable Jack Russell Terrier, had climbed the racks of the dishwasher and onto the countertop in order to get to my Southern pecan pie. Paws in the middle of the tie pin and pie all over his face. The pecans, filling, crust, they were everywhere, and his little butt was wagging back and forth. I was so bummed not to have my piece of pie, but I gotta say, that moment seeing Norman on the kitchen counter frantically scarfing down all of that pie will always be an image that makes me smile. Some of us need those moments, a lot of those moments now, little things that make us smile, especially during challenging times. Here in this sanctuary, in this moment, each and every one of us is valued and accepted. We all belong. We are safe here to be who we need to be. Let us center ourselves as we take a deep breath together in gratitude. We are gathered in community.
In our opening hymn this morning, we sang the words, both sorrow and gladness, in joy and tribulation. Fitting emotions, perhaps, for those of us preparing to spend Thanksgiving with uncles, cousins, siblings, parents who fall somewhere different than us on the spectrum of views held by our fellow citizens. Or maybe you plan to celebrate with your chosen family, or maybe not at all. You know, I've just finished reading a book called Modern Magic, Stories, Rituals, and Spells for Contemporary Witches. While I am not yet entirely convinced of my own witchiness, I did really enjoy the book. And I couldn't help noticing that the author described in almost every spell and ritual, no matter the intention, the practice of lighting a candle. People light candles for many reasons, and our chalice is no different. Each week, we speak aloud the reasons our community kindles our communal flames. And perhaps each week, you are adding to our chalice a personal intention you are holding in your heart: sorrow, gladness, joy, or tribulation. Today, I would like to invite Leah Tame to join us here on the chancel to light our communal chalice. As Leah lights our chalice here in the sanctuary, we invite our online community to light a chalice of your own, perhaps sharing in the chat the chalice is lit and from where you're joining us today. Now, all of you, whether here in the sanctuary or joining us online, I would ask you to join your voice together as we speak together our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Thank you, Leah. If ever you find that sorrow and tribulation are starting to overwhelm your gladness and joy, remember that you are right this moment in the company of those who wish you well, who are waiting here on your left and on your right, who are watching on YouTube now or later, who have covenanted to love you, to help you and to help you find your joy, even on the days when you've run out of ideas for where to look for it. Would you join me in saying, with real commitment, the words of our covenant to each other? The spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another.
On the Sunday after the election, Dusty and I gathered with all of the elementary kids in Foz Chapel for an all-ages chapel, and we had a really amazing conversation about making space for our feelings, especially the most difficult ones, the ones we would prefer to push away, like anger, fear, anxiety, and sadness. Now, I asked a question in that space to all of the kids, and I'm going to ask that question again. So all the kids and youth that are here, I'm only going to say this once, because this is not Sunday school. Pay attention, just for a second. In the last few weeks, and again, I'm asking all the young people in the space, have your grown-ups had lots of big feelings? Would you say maybe yes? This way, kind of maybe sometimes? Yes, maybe? How do you think when I asked that question the 4 or 5 days after the election, how do you think the kids responded at that time? Yes, big yeses. Did any of you have big feelings that week? Are any of you still having lots of big feelings? Well, I can confirm, and I think Dusty will back me up, that overwhelmingly the kids said yes. Their grown-ups were emotional wrecks. I know that I was. The day after the election, I wrote a short message to SGD families, and it ended as follows. This morning, I dropped my children at the bus stop and reminded them to be kind today. As they drove off to school, the tears came. Making coffee, loading the dishwasher, getting ready for work, all of them felt like insurmountable tasks. And then I took my dog for a walk, because dogs need walks. And I noticed the leaves falling, as they do every autumn. And when I got back home, I saw our new kitten chasing her tail, as she does every morning. The world spins madly, gently on. I've thought about that moment with my kitten a lot, because I always giggle when she engages in her little kitten shenanigans. She likes to crawl up the walls and up the curtains, so we call her, what do we call her? Spider Cat. We call her Spider Cat. In that giggle, there's joy. And that morning, like every morning, I giggled at her silliness. And in that same moment, I was overcome with guilt and shame. How dare I feel joy with the world as it is right now? With so many fearful about the future, with so much despair and distrust, joy felt wrong. Still, I picked up little Ivy Rose and snuggled her soft fur and felt a burst of happiness. Joy is never wrong. We need joy. Joy heals, joy energizes, joy makes it possible to go on. Experiencing joy is an act of resistance because it fuels us to fight for a better world, a world with less pain and suffering, a world with more giggling. Our story for all ages this morning teaches us to embrace the whoosh of joy, to help others discover it too, and to always remember that joy is a gift that belongs to each one of us. Joy, written by Corinne Avaris, illustrated by Isabel Folleth. Fern loved Nana. She loved her butterfly cakes, her mantelpiece mice, and her cat, Snowball. Most of all, she loved her smile. But recently, Nana had stopped baking cakes. The mice were dusty, and Snowball was more like a ball of fuzz. Worst of all, Nana hardly ever smiled. "What's wrong with Nana?" Fern asked her mother. "I don't know," Mom replied. "It's like the joy has gone out of her life." "What's joy?" asked Fern. "Joy is what makes your heart happy and your eyes twinkle. Like when we all dance after dinner, or when I get the giggles with Ernie, or when I go whooshing down a slide." "Yes, a great big whoosh," said Mom. Nana deserved some whoosh, thought Fern. And if the joy had gone out of Nana's life, then she would bring it back. But where would Fern find it? And how would she carry it to Nana? She searched the house for a catching kit, a can, a paper bag, a saucepan, a box with no lid, a lid with no box, a fishing net, and a pointy stick. Into Fern's catching bag it all went. That afternoon, Fern and her mother set off for the park. There would be plenty of joy there. No one would mind if she borrowed some for Nana. A puppy bounded toward Fern, its floppy ears flying up and down. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Fern giggled. She felt that whoosh of joy. She tried to catch the bounce, but the bounce wouldn't go in the box. On the swing, a baby chuckled each time her daddy tickled her feet. Tickle, tickle, chuckle, chuckle. Fern chuckled too. She felt the whoosh of joy. She tried to catch the chuckles, and then she tried to catch the tickles. But neither the chuckles nor the tickles would go in the can. When Fern reached the duck pond, a shimmer of sun sparkles rippled across the water. Fern smiled. She felt the whoosh of joy. Nana would love this, she thought. She tried to catch the sparkles, first with her fishing net, and then with her paper bag, and finally with a scoop from her saucepan. But the sparkles just disappeared. Finding joy was easy, but catching it was hard. Fern walked home with heavy feet. She loved Nana and wanted to bring joy back into her life. But her catching bag was empty. Nana was snoozing in her chair. Fern laid her head on her arm. "What's the matter?" asked Nana. "I wanted to catch some joy for you, but couldn't," said Fern sadly. Fern told Nana about all the things she had seen. To Fern's surprise, Nana smiled. It was the biggest, widest whoosh of a smile Fern had ever seen. "You don't need a can or a box or a net to bring me joy," Nana said. "You bring me all the joy in the world just by being you." The next day, Fern took Nana to the park. Whoosh! Together, they found joy in the most unusual places. And this time, Fern's catching bag was full to the brim with Nana's delicious butterfly cakes. The end. And now is the time in our service when we sing our children to their programs. I invite all of our elementary kids to follow their adult leaders to the lower level as the congregation sings with love and tenderness.
Well, we're going to keep some of that joy going as we engage today on this Sunday in one of our periodic, roughly annual ritual/traditions. Today is a Snapshot Sunday, Survey Sunday, an opportunity for our community to provide feedback on our Sunday services. Let me first say a word about what that is. We periodically, about once a year, we do this survey and inviting your thoughts. It's a snapshot in time. It's a slice that we kind of look at and compare to earlier slices. It's not intended to be comprehensive feedback or analysis, but to give us a sense of what is our community's thoughts, feedbacks, reactions. So there's some folks who may not be here this particular Sunday. That's fine. They may not be online. You'll have an opportunity to participate in a future snapshot survey. There are a variety of ways to participate. So in just a moment, we will see a QR code as well as the written description of a link that you can type into your browser. Those are the preferred ways to participate in the survey. We do, for accessibility and inclusivity purposes, also have paper and pencil, and if you need a paper and pencil version, please raise your hand and an usher will come around and offer you such. But If you can do this electronically, it is better because we have to take the paper version and then input it electronically later. So those are the 3 ways to participate. I will rarely, almost never, other than on this occasion, say take out your devices, feel free to turn them on in the middle of our service. I will say please make sure the volume is all the way off in case you forget to turn off your phone at the conclusion of finishing the survey. Now, our guidelines for participation in the survey, including your name and contact information, is compulsory. We don't do anonymous feedback in the relationships we establish in community. But in addition, sometimes there's a need to be in touch with someone or ask for clarifying information, and your contact information allows us to do that. When we eventually report out the results of these surveys, they are anonymized for the purposes of reporting them out as an aggregate. You'll see open-ended questions in the first 2 questions. That is on purpose. You can tell us anything you'd like by way of appreciation, which is the first question, and by way of feedback, which is the second question. We invite you to please not write multi-part essays. So focus, because that's hard to categorize and figure out like what's most important. So please think of your most important 1 or 2 bits of feedback and offer that to question 1 and question 2. And know also that we have ongoing year-long processes by which anyone in our community can offer us feedback about anything. One way to do that is through the shared Ministries team. And so there's a process year-round. This is not the only opportunity. We have a new question for you this year, the 3rd one. We're trying this out and seeing how this works. We may bring this to you again. The 3rd question is a targeted question specifically asking for feedback about our annual animal blessing service and how we can make it in such a way that more of our congregants can bring their animals to the animal blessing service. So that's a targeted question, which is number 3. We're going to have a few minutes of instrumental music as backdrop, and we invite you, whether you're online with us or in person, please take a few moments to fill out your snapshot survey. Thank you. If you need a few more moments, please feel free to continue working on those surveys as you're able to. They remain open until about the conclusion of our service this morning. Thank you for participating, and we look forward to sharing with you the feedback that we heard.
I have found that time and time again, those who offer pastoral care to others find joy in the act of giving, whatever shape it might take. Offering a ride, cooking a meal, making a phone call, showing up for a visit, writing cards, or just being present and listening. I have yet to see a volunteer do these things begrudgingly. These acts of care bring joy to those giving and receiving. Now, you remember Fern in our story earlier. She could see joy all around her and wanted to capture it, but only later realized she didn't need to capture it because it existed within her, and it emerged when she gave of herself to her Nana. Now, each of you have that joy within, just waiting to be let loose when you volunteer, when you offer your time or your talents, when you give financial gifts to this congregation. The spiritual practice of giving, living into our value of generosity, should be grounded in joy. Look around you whenever you are in this community. What happens here is possible because of your generosity. If you are in a place that allows you to give financially, even the smallest amount, I invite you to do so joyfully today to ensure that the programs and ministries of UUAA continue. And believe me, the work we do here in the coming years will be literally life-saving to many of our beloveds. We simply must continue to show up and do the work. Now, you might be asking, how can I get in on this joy of giving? Well, it's quite simple. You may put cash or checks in the basket that come by. You may go to uuaa.org/giving, or you may text UUAA to 73256. Also, if you have just completed a paper survey, you are welcome to put that into the offering basket as well, or hand it to an usher on your way out at the end of the service. Now, if you are here for the very first time, or you're just visiting over the holidays, know that your presence here is your gift to us, and allow the baskets to pass you by. In a moment, the choir will sing to us of joy. We have started to include the lyrics of choir anthems in the online order of service, which you can always access at uuaa.org/OOS. You can open that now and reference it now while they're singing, or look at it later. Will the ushers now come forward, as today's offering will gratefully and joyfully be given and received.
Darkest night, cheerfully bright.
Thank you. Thank you, choir. Joyful our praise as all our voices we raise, singing in glad celebration. Let us echo that sentiment now as the ushers come forward. Will you rise in body or in spirit as we raise our voices in glad celebration to speak the words we use to dedicate our offering? Together we say, to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. Thank you. You may have a seat.
What joy our voices can radiate and bring alive. Thank you for that gift this morning. Last weekend, I was on a spiritual retreat with one of my longtime teachers and elders, and it is always a joy for me to be both with him and with the community that gathers around him. It's always a deeply restorative and joy-filled experience. It was quite something to come back from that, return to Ann Arbor, and as I engaged in the meetings and events of our community over this past week, I noticed the same thing over and over again. I noticed the presence of sadness and grief, the presence of fear and worry and anxiety, and the presence of anger and frustration. Such strong emotions, perhaps you've encountered these feelings in yourself as well in recent days. It would be understandable if you have. I returned to Ann Arbor to learn that there had been a White Lives Matter racist demonstration in front of our stadium the last weekend, Saturday of last weekend. That there was a counter-protest, that's a good thing, the very next day, last Sunday. I learned that the University of Michigan Regents, the Board of Trustees of the university, are meeting on or around December 5th to vote on dismantling all of the university's diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Taken as a whole, this is astonishing to me. We're just 2 weeks past an election. The incoming administration hasn't even been inaugurated yet. That's still months away. And here we are already with opportunistic, exclusionary, race-based motivations already showing up, including here where we live. There is good reason why any of us might be feeling grief and fear or anger. And here we are today gathered to talk about joy. How do you do that? It almost feels like a non sequitur. Maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. I've been thinking a lot this past week about a journey I went on. This was my first year here in our community back in around 2018, 2019. I was part of a delegation sponsored by the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. We call it the UUSC. It was a delegation to Honduras to be present to the situation there. And for those who don't know, there had been a democratically elected government in Honduras in 2009. That democratically elected government was overthrown in a coup by a corrupt regime that at that point in time had been around for about a decade, a regime that jailed anyone that spoke out against it, or tortured or murdered. They worked hand in hand with drug and criminal cartels to ensure mutual enrichment, that those criminal leaders were well-served and wealthy, and that the government officials got to profit off of all of that. The entire system was corrupt and oppressive to its core. That's what I visited in 2019, and many of you know I'm a deeply emotionally oriented person, fairly sensitive to the energies in the environment around me. I can pick up on all of these types of things, and I have never had such a strong bodily reaction to being in a particular environment as I had for the entire time I was in Honduras. It felt palpably oppressive to me. I could feel it in every fiber of my being. It was as if the air itself carried the oppressiveness. It felt like a sickness permeated the water, the air, everything around us, the culture, the society, that it was ill, that it was twisted, that it was fundamentally unwell. And in fact, a lot of that was true. The way the society was moving and existed at that time was fundamentally unwell. In the middle of that, I got to meet freedom fighters. The UUSC is our denomination's international human rights organization, and we were there to support those that were working for democratic principles and human rights. And I got to meet these local freedom fighters, grassroots community leaders who were risking their lives, not just their own lives, the lives of their children, the lives of their spouses, to stand up for what's right. This was so striking to me. There was no ambiguity on the parts of these community leaders. They were resigned to this. They had completely accepted that the fact that they were doing the work that they were doing, the fact that they were even meeting with an international organization that stood for human rights, meant that their children could be murdered willfully by this regime, that they could be kidnapped and tortured and murdered willfully. What was amazing was the clarity and the strength I saw then in them, not only in accepting this, but the clarity that they wouldn't change a thing about what they were doing. They knew that the principles that they were standing up for and working towards were the right ones, and what consequences came, they may not want those consequences that were there potentially, but that wasn't up to them. What their work to do, what their job to do in the moment was to stand up for the right thing. How does one find such bravery, such courage in one's heart? I don't know. I wondered at this. I marveled at it, really. Perhaps when there's no other choice but to be that courageous and brave, perhaps that's just what you do then. There was something else, too, I noticed. As I wrestled with my own sorrow and frustration at witnessing these realities, these social and political realities, I noticed something else. These freedom fighters, these community leaders, by and far, most of them were women. They were fierce. They were committed. They had fully accepted that they could be murdered by the state that was supposed to protect the common good. And they made time for playfully engaging with one another. It was kind of amazing. The sharp pivots that would occur, we'd be talking about something or meeting with a community, and the fierceness and the commitment and the fire and the passion would be there. 15 minutes later, sharp pivot, and there's dancing. They're dancing with one another, or they're breaking into song. They're engaged in the arts and the handicrafts of their culture and their communities. All of this, side by side, with the necessary freedom, fierceness, and commitment to freedom that their society needed. This beauty and playfulness that I experienced, joy, it was joy, which is really a way of saying that they were embodying who they were with love, with a love for life, with an appreciation for how precious these soft human bodies are that we get for just such a short amount of time, that every breath and every moment was worth appreciating whatever beauty and love and connection we could find around us. My response to their social and political reality was grief and even revulsion. And there, in this society that was navigating such brutal, wanton corruption and oppression, I encountered some of the most genuinely joyful, committed social justice activists I have met on planet Earth. It was so moving, it has stayed with me ever since then. And I've learned a few things from these amazing, fierce, and joyful women that I encountered there. First, I'd say joy is not something that just kind of knocks on our door and magically shows up, and sometimes it does. But more often, it's something that we have to notice is around us. We have to reach out and grab it. We have to claim it. And that's part of what I saw these activists doing. They were claiming joy, maybe even despite all the circumstances around them. And what they showed me is that joy has nothing to do with how hard or challenging life is. Joy has nothing to do with how oppressive the government is. Joy has nothing to do with how unfair and unjust the circumstances one must weather are. We recognize this implicitly a bit in our tradition. It's one of the reasons why we are so drawn to the gospel music of the Black tradition. And I could add on to gospel a few commas. I could say in the blues music and jazz music. We can see in the living reality of our nation's Black population a living with the brutal history of social oppression, of injustice, of hardship beyond measure. And the Black church tradition, in response, in dialogue with, in relationship with, has produced music that is not only grounded in that reality, but claims devotion, which is a form of love, commitment, freedom, and joy. Not because suffering and injustice have been overcome, but in a deep embodied understanding that none of us were born, none of us are here simply to suffer. We encounter suffering and hardship, but always at every turn, love, caring, beauty, compassion, all of these things that represent the intrinsic joy that we can find in the experience of being human, all of these things are available to us. Western civilization, which we are all enculturated into, myself included, encourages deeply dualistic ways of thinking. Things are either A or they're B, they're one or the other, figure it out. I'm either suffering or I'm content. I'm either navigating hardship or I'm happy. I get my way about something and I feel good, or I don't get my way and I feel bad. These are deeply dualistic either-or ways of thinking, and what that dualism eliminates is the possibility that many things can be true at the same time, including things that might feel a little contradictory. What if it might be the case that A and B are always true? What if there's always hardship or challenge or difficult things in life? And what if always we have access to joy? I have never known a time in my life, I can look at years, from childhood onwards, I have never known a point in my life where I have not had difficult things I have to figure out, challenges that need to be navigated. I can look at any point in time in my life, including now, and that's true. I dare say that's true for most of us. We're constantly figuring out what it means to be human, and relationships and work or home life circumstances that need our care and attention. There is always stuff to figure out that might feel difficult or challenging. And that doesn't mean that joy is absent. This one is so tricky. I bought into this dualism for years and years of my adult life, utterly convinced that if I'm navigating hard things, challenging things, well, then, there's no happiness. How could I possibly be happy if I'm navigating hard and challenging things? I remember distinctly this moment, like almost this magical moment when I kind of awoke from this false spell, this lie. And it was in seminary, over 20 years ago now, and I was walking around as if the entire weight of the world was on my shoulders. So many difficult and complex things was I trying to figure out and navigate. And in just a moment, and let me tell you, Boston's winters are long and cold and somewhat miserable, and it was just the early days of spring, and I noticed a tree blossoming a flower, and I stopped. I really stopped. And I took in the flower. Something so small, but this is how it starts. This is how we find joy. It's the beginning of finding joy is looking to the small things, looking for them, noticing the small things. And I had this moment where both things were true. Yeah, none of my difficult, challenging situations had disappeared, and there was beauty, amazing beauty, a sign of winter thawing and a new season of life emerging, and I found possibility in that, a reminder that life is continually renewing itself. We can wind up thinking that we're only allowed to be happy and feel content and joy when all the pieces of the puzzle are magically connected and in perfect alignment, and then I will feel happy. Then. That then doesn't arrive. There is no such then. And if it arrives, it's ephemeral. It doesn't last. We are always figuring stuff out. We're always figuring. So the challenge, the work becomes, how do we notice joy as much as we notice the hardship? Oh, it's easy for us humans. We are biologically wired to notice that which we don't like or that which isn't perfect. That we do. We're biologically wired to do that. How do we notice? Make ourselves notice, invite ourselves to notice that joy exists all around us in each and every one of those moments of hardship and challenge. This is a noticing that we have to practice. And in that practicing, it can become internalized. It can become a habit. And it's a beautiful habit to inculcate. It's an internalization of appreciation and gratitude. As we head into this Thanksgiving week, there is no more fundamental and beautiful way to practice gratitude than to really begin to internalize the practice of noticing the small things around us that are just right, that are good, that are beautiful. And sometimes we really do need to start small, like really small things that might otherwise be incongruous and maybe even not that important, like Pie Sunday, our made-up occasion. We can even say it's just an excuse to enjoy pie. Thank you, Reverend Kimberly. Reverend Kimberly came to me before my sabbatical last year and said, I'd like to bring this little practice, this little mini tradition I have to UU Ann Arbor. I'd like to do this Sunday with pies. And I said, I love it, except I'm super jealous that I'm not going to be around because I really, really like pie. So I said, I'll just have to do another Pie Sunday after I'm back from my sabbatical. And, I kind of like this so much. Maybe it will just be an annual tradition. I don't know. But for those who don't know, I had to kind of think about this. What is it about me and baked goods? Like, I love baked goods. I really do. Homemade cookies, pies. Anybody who wants to give me pies or cookies that you have made yourself, they are always welcome. I will never say no. I will relish them. I will send you thank you notes. It will be lovely. Don't be shy about that. And if you need inspiration, I love a good chocolate pie. Oh my gosh, chocolate's amazing. Chocolate pie. What a gift. And coconut cream. We had a coconut cream at the first service. You may be lucky if there's still some left. Apple, one of our choir members, made homemade apple pie. You can't go wrong with apple. That's like our national thing, right? Apple pie, strawberry rhubarb. I'm with Lori and Norman. Pecan pie, a nice gooey homemade pecan pie. Oh, my first spouse, my first husband, he was from the South, so I learned the joys of chess pie. I've lived in Boston. How can you not appreciate a good Boston cream pie? I've also lived in Florida. Key lime pie made with fresh key limes. Oh, it's kind of amazing. What have I missed? We're in Michigan. How could I have missed cherry? You gotta love a nice Michigan cherry pie. What else? Pumpkin pie. Lemon meringue. I heard an award-winning lemon meringue in the first service. And let's not forget the savory pies. Hey, that's where I'm going. I heard chicken pot pie over there. I am vegetarian, so I'd say vegetable. I love a good vegetable pot pie. Broccoli and cheese pie, spinach pie. Oh, the joys of pie. I could just talk about pie all Sunday with you. It brings me joy. Now, notice your internal energy right now. Having thought a bit about pie, it's shifted. It's not in the same place when we were talking about the White Lives Matter rally. Notice that. I didn't just talk about pie for no reason. We bring our intention. We bring our attention to the thing that brings us joy, to the thing that is infused with love. This Sunday, gifts of pie, generously brought with the spirit of love. That's worth appreciating. Do not take these things for granted. When we take these things for granted, that is when we convince ourselves that life is misery and only misery. Do not take the love and the beauty you are surrounded by for granted. that starts with pie. But we can easily expand that. I already started to do that a little bit. Take a moment and rest yourself in your choice to be here this morning. You've chosen today, but you have chosen likely before to return to community again and again, because you have found something here of value, something worth returning to. The love and care of neighbors, people who support one another and show up for one another in times of celebration and in times of hardship or loss. There is profound beauty in that commitment to love neighbor and to show up in that way. You've likely found here inspiration, wisdom, insight, all kinds of beautiful things, companionship, that have supported you in your life journey. Therefore, you make the commitment to come back over and over again, which is an act of love on your part, to offer that part of yourself to others, and knowing that you're going to receive it in turn, in time, back. Take a moment to feel that. Take now a moment to embody it, knowing what that beauty is, knowing what that love means, knowing what that commitment means. Bring it alive in your expression. It's a beautiful thing. Smile. Let the love, let the caring, let the commitment radiate out through you. And take a minute to look out. Look out among your peers here. Drink it in. Energetically drink it in. Those of you joining us at home, you too. It's a beautiful thing. Do not take this for granted. Don't take any of the joy and beauty for granted. It is a gift. It is part of the intrinsic joy of being human. We could go on and keep expanding the circle of things to notice, things to not take for granted. The larger point is that these sources of joy are always available to us, and we must, hear me, we must make time to be present, to notice these good and right things, and ground ourselves in these beautiful sources of joy. For they are indeed the fuel that will allow us to courageously engage with all the things the world is going to need from us, all the things that are yet to come. So know that we are a people who will not sacrifice joy. It is ours to claim, and we plan on claiming it, and the claiming of it starts now. Please rise as you're able in body or spirit. From the hearts and spirits of a people who have known oppression and hardship, take with you that aspiration to let your light shine. The love and the goodness in your heart, in each and every one of us here, I know it exists. It's there. Don't cover it up. Don't hide it. There are people right next to you, close by you, who need it. The warmth of your light, your presence, your goodness, your love. We know we're headed into a time where more and more of it will be needed. So take good care to appreciate it when it's around you. Offer your light and love back. Nurture each other, for that is how we live into joy and strengthen and pave the way forward. Go in love and peace. Amen.
Amen.